My name is Roja.
And my name is Devika.
And we're here to present our Van der Graaf experiment today with you. We're also joined behind the camera with our management team today. So to get started, Devika is going to tell us a little bit about our Van der Graaf machine.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the history of this little weird looking contraption here. So this machine right here is called a Van der Graaf generator. And a Van der Graaf generator was invented by a man called Robert Van der Graaf way back in the 1920s. So how exactly does this machine work? So you may see that this machine has this metal sphere right here. And inside the sphere, we have a metal comb, and you can also see this belt over here. So this belt is going to run around in a loop, and it's going to be collecting electrons from the metal comb and depositing it onto the sphere, and it's going to be negatively charged. And before we turn this on, we'll be doing our first Zoom poll question.
What do you think will happen when the Van der Graaf generator is turned on?
And we'll give you guys some time to think about this question. And once you're ready and done answering the question, we'll resume back and we'll be turning on the generator and seeing what happens.
Awesome. So I can see that a lot of you have picked our second response. So let's see what happens when we turn our Van der Graaf on. Before we turn it on, we just want to say that Devika and I are both trained scientists who have all the necessary personal protective equipment to do this experiment. And please do not try this at home. Our Van der Graaf machine can also be a little bit loud, so you may want to turn down the volume on whatever device you're listening to us on. Now we're going to turn off the lights as well, so you'll be able to see our Van der Graaf generator a little bit better. Okay, here we go. Awesome! Did everyone have a chance to see what happened when we turned on our Van der Graaf generator? Now we're going to turn the lights back on and talk a little bit about what we just saw. So, you may have seen a little spark flowing between the two spheres of our Van der Graaf generator. This was actually an electric charge transferring quickly between the two spheres. So it was jumping from one sphere to another, and that was creating that little white or silver looking spark that you might have seen on your computer at home. Devika now is going to tell us a little bit about grounding, which is something you have to do when you use a Van der Graaf generator.
Yeah, exactly. So before we can move on to the next part of our experiment here, I'm going to do something called grounding. So what I'll be doing is that I'll be taking the second sphere here, moving a little bit close, and maybe you heard a little bit of a spark there as well. So what grounding is that when Roja turned on this Van der Graaf generator here, it deposited the negative charge onto the sphere. So now there's lots of negative charge that's built up on the sphere and that's moving towards this sphere. And in order to get rid of that negative charge and make the spheres neutral again, what I did is that I moved the spheres close together and allowed the charge to escape to this sphere and down to the ground so that both the spheres are once again neutral. And now Roja will be going over the next part of our experiment.
Awesome. So here I have some aluminum pie plates. You may have some of these at home. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to place these aluminum tinfoil plates on top of one of the spheres of our Van der Graaf generator. Okay, and now we have a Zoom poll question asking you what you think is going to happen once we turn on the Van der Graaf generator with our tinfoil spheres on it. Okay, so I can see that we have a couple of different answers in our Zoom poll right now. So I'm super excited to show you all what's actually going to happen once we turn our Van der Graaf generator on. Okay, so I hope you're all ready. I'm going to turn on our Van der Graaf generator once again, and let's see what happens.
Look at that.
So as you just saw, our tinfoil plates flew off of our Van der Graaf sphere. Devika here is going to explain why that happened.
Exactly. So before we get to our explanation, I'd like you guys to think about why exactly did the spheres fly off of, why exactly did the tinfoil plates fly off the spheres there? And that brings us to our next Zoom poll question.
Why do you think the tinfoil plates flew off the sphere?
All right, so hopefully everyone had a chance to answer. And Roja, what seems to be the most popular option?
Our most popular option is that our plates have the same charge and are repelled away from one another.
All right, so that's an excellent option. And I'm glad to see that so many people picked that option because that's exactly what's happening with the tinfoil plates here. So in order to explain what's happening, we need to remember two principles about charges. So the first principle is that like charges, which are charges of the same charge, so a positive charge and a positive charge, or a negative charge and a negative charge. So in our example, let's say that two negative charges are next to each other. They're going to undergo repulsion, which means that those charges are going to want to move away from each other, kind of like two people that don't like each other. And that's exactly what happened here. Our tinfoil plates, when we put them on the sphere here, they became negatively charged, and all the plates became negatively charged, which means that repulsion is occurring, and the plates want to move as far apart as they can, so they start flying apart. And our second principle is that unlike charges are attracted towards each other. So let's say if we had a positive charge and a negative charge, and they were close together, they would want to move even closer together, and they're undergoing attraction. So that's how our tinfoil plates and why they flew off. And now we'll be going on to our next part.
Yeah, so before we get going one more time, Devika is just going to touch our sphere again for grounding. So you can hear that little spark, and that means that our two spheres are neutral once again. Okay, our next part of the experiment, I'm going to be putting a little bit of fur on top of our one Van der Graaf sphere, while Devika moves the other one a little further away. We have now our last Zoom poll question that is going to pop up on your screen right now.
What do you think will happen when we put the piece of fur on the sphere?
Okay. So hopefully you got to learn a little bit with our tinfoil plates. And so now you might wonder how that works with our piece of fur here. Awesome, I'm seeing a lot of great responses in our Zoom poll, and it looks like our most popular one is that the fur will rise up. So let's see what happens when I turn on the Van der Graaf generator right now. Awesome, okay. So hopefully you were able to see how our fur was going up and down, so it was rising up while our Van der Graaf generator was on. And Devika's going to give a little explanation about this.
Yeah, thank you, Roja. So it's basically the exact same principle that applied to our tinfoil plates. So the reason why the hair is rising up is because of that same principle of repulsion. So because we put this fur on top of our sphere, it's also becoming negatively charged. And if we remember, like charges repel. So that means once the hair becomes negatively charged, all the little hair strands, they're going to want to move as far apart as they can. So that's why the hair starts rising up and trying to be as far apart as they can. And hopefully our Van der Graaf generator helped you learn about the principles of.
We have one principle that we'd like you to remember from today's experiment, and that is that our like charges repel and our opposite charges attract. So we saw that happen here with our Van der Graaf generator when we got to make our tinfoil plates and fur negatively charged, and that made it rise up or fly away from our Van der Graaf generator because these were like charges that repelled. If we were able to make two opposite charges happen, they would attract and come close together. So this brings us to the end of our experiment portion, and now we're happy to take questions from all of you at home through the Q&A function on Zoom.
Hey guys, so we have one question in the Q&A here so far. Someone wants to know who invented the Van der Graaf generator and when was it invented?
Yeah, for sure. So the Van der Graaf generator, it was invented way back in the 1920s, so a long time ago, and it was invented by a man named Robert Van der Graaf. So that's where the name of this generator comes from. It's the last name of Robert Van der Graaf.
We're just going to wait maybe a few more minutes for some other questions maybe to come in. Mohammed is wondering, is it dangerous to touch the machine when it's on?
That's a really good question. So like you might have seen, there are these charges that will fly between our two Van der Graaf spheres when they're turned on. And Devika showed us a little bit about grounding, and how she grounded our Van der Graaf machine was by touching one sphere to the other one. However, if you really wanted to, you could also ground the machine by actually touching it with your finger. This is because ourselves as humans can also conduct electric charges. So this means that the negative charge from our Van der Graaf, or that buildup of negative charges or electrons, would flow through all the way from my finger into the ground. You might feel a little bit of shock, and depending on the voltage or how much electricity is stored in our Van der Graaf, it could be a little bit dangerous. But with our Van der Graaf here, it would be safe to touch if it's on. You might just feel a little bit of a shock.
Okay, perfect. Don't think we have any more questions left. If we want to wait a few more seconds for maybe some last minute questions. Okay, I think that wraps up our Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for our Van der Graaf experiment today. We hope you had a lot of fun and learned something new as well. Enjoy the rest of our Science Fun Week videos and live presentations. Bye.
Bye.